Peter Hakem, President Emeritus of the Inter-American Dialogue, is here in our Washington studios. And by Skype from England, we're joined by Jordan Allott, Senior Advisor to In Defense of Christians. Jordan, the Catholic Church helped with this deal, but is it in the position to push for more religious freedom rights for Cubans? Haven't you talked to some of the opposition leaders on the ground there?
Well, I hope that it would be in a better position. However, I've talked to a lot of opposition leaders, as you said, Cubans who have been working on freedom for Cuba, more religious freedom for decades now. And I would say they're skeptical at best that more religious freedom will come. They don't believe that this deal will really trickle down and affect the Cuban people. There's no promises by the Castro regime that they would allow for more political or civil freedoms. And so they've been duped many times. And at this point, they don't trust the Castro government. And I don't know why we should either.
And Peter, there have been more than 50 years of non-engagement. What diplomatic and trade possibilities would now open up with this new arrangement?
Well, first of all, it's not been 50 years without any engagement.
Very little?
The U.S. has been negotiating with the Cubans virtually the entire period. But with regard to the Coast Guard and drug trafficking, with regard to immigration issues, there's just been a lot of conversations by president after president. That's who you negotiate with, by the way, your enemies. And right now, that dialogue is going to deepen. It's going to expand. But remember, there is a lot of exchange between the island now. Cuban Americans are sending upwards of $2 billion a year into Cuba every year as remittances to family members, friends.
They'll be able to send more.
They'll be able to send 4 times more than they're sending now, actually. Secondly, the U.S. is the major supplier of agricultural products to Cuba, and Cuba has to import a good share of what it consumes.
How is this deal being viewed by the rest of the West? Is it?
Oh, I mean, I think that there is very little opposition outside of the U.S. Congress and perhaps pockets in the United States, literally speaking.
And the Cuban people as well.
You have 35 countries in the Western Hemisphere, 33 of them, aside from the U.S. and Cuba, have normal relations with Cuba, have been pushing the United States. If there's one thing that unifies this hemisphere, it's opposition to the U.S. embargo on Cuba.
Now, Jordan just pointed out that the Cuban people are not so thrilled about this. Expand on that a little bit.
Well, I think some are hopeful that maybe the embargo will be lifted, but they're not naive to think that the Castro government is going to change and start allowing them to exercise freedoms of expression or somehow vote for their next leader. I mean, at what point are we going to not, stand up in solidarity with the Cuban people? Hopefully other Western countries will as well, and demand these sort of basic human rights for the Cuban people. I don't hear a discussion about that.
Yeah, we know that Pope Francis worked with the president on this, and we've heard about the phone calls and the meetings and the letter and that sort of thing. But Cuba is still suppressing the church. Why do you think the Pope would encourage this American support for Cuba when there's no guarantee the regime is going to change there?
Well, I'm not really sure, and I know the church is pretty much the only civil society that's allowed to exist in Cuba, and they do have certain rights, but I don't think anybody would define religious freedom as the ability to, I guess, ask the government what they're allowed to do and not to do. For example, we want to build a church or repair a church. Not that they have many funds to do so, but even when they want to, they have to go to the government and say, well, what do we have to do to be allowed to fix a church or to have a mass or to have an outdoor mass or to, I guess, print a pamphlet and distribute it. They go to the government to ask for these things. That is not in anybody's definition of religious freedom.
That is not. All right, and very quickly, you mentioned Congress being opposed. What do you think they'll do to try to block this, or will they?
Well, I think there'll be a group of congressmen for a variety of reasons. Some are passionately opposed to the Castro government. They've been passionately opposed, and they stand against any kind of U.S. opening to Cuba. They will be at the center of it, but a lot of others will do it because they think it's a good campaign issue, they think it's a good political issue, they want to criticize the president.
Yeah, we'll see how it all pans out. Peter Hakem, thanks for joining us here in Washington. And Jordan Allott, we appreciate you joining us from England. Thank you.